before we start open the floor to the questions in the first Q&A session, I'd just like to thank the three panelists who've already spoken once more. And just to summarize what we've heard so far, so certainly some interesting information about the varied things that people have done whilst at CERN, what it's brought to them when they've moved to the world of academia, from academia to consulting. Certainly everyone's clearly passionate about what they do. Some beautiful honesty as well, we're hearing about the moves you've made. And I wrote down a few quotes I heard. Jacob, you mentioned that instead of developing software, you've now developed people. I think that's pretty cool. And that's quite a beautiful insight of the move from academia to consulting, as well as, you know, perhaps the comparison between the work isn't necessarily always quite, well, it's exciting, if this is the right word or not, but building a project management tool is not as exciting as finding the Higgs boson, I think you also mentioned too. I think that's probably something we can all reflect on as well. I like that you brought the points that everybody should consider aligning regularly, early, often, staying curious, focusing on timing in terms of the projects that you work on now compared to the timing that there was at CERN. We also heard from Ignacio about how interviews are very important. Just a small insight on I feel for you with your 3 applications you made to CERN. But quite honestly, it's not necessarily that you weren't wanted. I'd say it might be just a question of timing. So that's also something to bear in mind when, alongside your point of applying for things, going to interviews, just keep trying as well. So perhaps now, if it's all right with everybody, Rachel, is it okay for me to open the floor to questions? Yeah, okay, great. So maybe we can look at one that Sandra asked just at the end of the chat directly to Ignacio as you finished speaking, Ignacio, saying, did you get your first job as a data scientist after studying machine learning, etc.?
Yes, that's right. Because in that interview, they asked me to solve a problem using machine learning. So I had to show that I know machine learning, I know how to train models, I know how to store, clean, prepare data, and how to deploy a model. So I needed the knowledge. If I don't have the knowledge, I couldn't get that job. So at least you can have some knowledge about programming skills, machine learning basics, and data science. You don't need to be an expert, but at least you need to know something.
That's a fair point. I can move on to another question here by Akshanka. Ignacio, great talk. How long did it take you to make the move, and how did you prepare?
As I said, 6 months, I think. Let's say 6 months, more or less. When I left CERN, I came back to Spain and I started to talk with some colleagues and looking for a job, reading job descriptions, what was demanded at that moment, Python, machine learning, what do you need? Now today everything is AI, OpenAI, ChatGPT, everything. But at that moment I started with a course, machine learning with Python, for example, deep learning specialization. So keep learning, and in the meantime, some interviews, keep learning, and at the end you can get a job.
Like an iterative process, effectively.
But it's not a quick process. It can take a few months if you are not familiar with machine learning or data science.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I can pose the next question to the 3 panelists who feels they're ready to answer this one. How does the salary in consulting compare to salary in research positions? It's a tricky one to answer, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I think it depends on also a little bit your bargaining skills and whether you're willing to do that. I think there's always negotiation possible. Yeah, the salary was better than at in research positions. But I don't know. In the Netherlands, the salary in research positions is also enough to live from. So I don't know if it's that important. Yeah.
Thank you, Romy. Very well answered. A tricky question. Jacob, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Now that I'm a team lead, I sit on the other side of the table. So I've had this question a lot about salaries, and like not regarding research or industry, but I think what you have to ask yourself first is salary the most important thing to you? I know that the first salary is of course like a milestone and a nice thing to aim for. But I've realized since I started working that salary isn't the whole deal. Like there are so many other things that are so much more important than the money that take in every month. This is just my personal perspective. Regarding consulting versus research, I guess consulting, the gap is bigger. I guess that you can suddenly get a very high salary if you work 60 hours a week at least. Yeah, so I think the gap is bigger. I think that's the main difference from my point of view.
Thank you, Jacob. Actually, that brings us perhaps quite nicely to the question that was asked in the chat, which Romy already commented on. Perhaps you'd like to mention something as well. Julian asked, how was the process of going from a 40-hour week in the public sector to the notorious lack of work-life balance in consulting? And Romy answered that actually she works 40 hours and their company policy is against overtime, but perhaps not all consulting firms are the same in that sense. I don't know if any of the other panelists here around the Zoom room have got comments on that as well.
Yeah, I think it very much depends. Okay, I had actually when I went to consulting, I had two offers. One where essentially, yeah, it was kind of expected that you do over hours, and where I'm now, where it's not really expected and also counted in, let's say, and then you get compensated if you want to do more. It very much depends, and you have to make up your mind about it also. It's a way to it's very often a way to get fast more money, but you have to think about it, and you have to be sure that it's really what you aim for.
It's a fair observation, I would say. Sorry, who was?
I can also chime in here.
Thank you.
Yes, so I second what Romy said. So yeah, you can choose, and but based on the company, there might be policies, right? And also actually for me, that's one of the pros of moving from academia into consultancy, that I have a better work-life balance now than I did in academia. So
excellent. Some myth busting there then, in fact. Very good. Thank you.
Maybe if we can add to that, we had a new colleague the other day, and he sent an email in the weekend, and then Monday, then another colleague said, "You're sending emails on the weekend. Why would you do that?" So sometimes it's even not appreciated. People want to enjoy their free time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a valid point, because the work-life balance is very much also up to yourself. So you have to figure out if you're going to be the one sending an email Friday evening. Yeah. So just throw it back at you.
Very wise advice. Thank you, Jacob. So there was another question here, which is, what is your experience on working hours in industry versus academia? Maybe perhaps we can consider this one touched upon. If somebody wants me to re-raise this, then please let me know. Perhaps we can have a look at something else. Do you think, panelists, that there are specific personal traits, such as high self-confidence, that are required for consulting? Everyone's having a moment to reflect. I can see a few faces looking like they're thinking.
I think confidence is always important in your work, but also humility at the same time. So whatever you do, if you're a consultant or if you're standing in front of a classroom, it helps if you have confidence.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. Took a bit of confidence for a few of us to get up here, I think, today as well. Anybody like to add anything else? Should I carry on? I'll carry on. Please interrupt me if you would like to say anything else. All right. Are there any common websites or similar where to look for consulting job postings? Or is it more a matter of looking into every company? What would be your approaches there, panelists?
I actually can't really answer if there's a website or something like that. I didn't use any of these. I mostly talked to former colleagues about it and used normal career portals, like LinkedIn or so, to get an overview, at least. But was mostly talking to former colleagues where I got my information about which companies are there, how's the style, and so on.
Okay, use your network then, I suppose you're telling us, Sebastian. Very good. Rachel, did you want to add something here?
Yeah, I can't help myself, but for those of you who aren't aware, we also have the alumni.cern platform where you will find the jobs page, and you will also find the maps, so you can search for people who have skills or in locations or work in industries that you're interested in, and you can connect with them. They're the best people to learn from, as you can see today, these fantastic speakers. And then we also have a mentoring module, so you can also look for mentors who can also help you in your professional development. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Jacob, did you want to add something on that about networking or no?
The alumni platform. Yeah, I suppose they already have this feature where you can filter on industry and yeah. But besides that, LinkedIn, I suppose, as Sebastian mentioned as well, would be my go-to. Similar thing like filtering on industry and then going for the consulting jobs if you want specifically those, or reach out to your union if you have unions are a big thing in Denmark, and they often help when you're in situations like this when you have to make a transition. So the engineering union, for instance, I would reach out to them and ask, so I'm looking for a job in consulting.
Great, thank you. Talking about transition here from academia to consulting, does one need experience after a master's to join consulting? How do the tier 1 consulting companies like McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group select people? Does anybody have any experience they can offer on this?
Well, I can share my own experience on that. And I think you don't really need to have any previous experience to start in your first job in consulting, but you need some skills. For example, if you are coming from computer science, physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, you already have some statistics skills, you know how to deal with data, you need programming skills. If you have that, I think you can start as a trainee or as a junior role to start learning in the company, learn with your colleagues and so on. But I think you don't really need it, but you cannot expect a great salary, and you will start as a junior or as a trainee.
Okay, thank you, Ignacio. Sebastian, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think here it's very much important that you are ready or prepared for also showing your skills during interviews and so on, because you will be asked to show that you are able to program something, that you are how you tackle problems, how you analyze them, and even tell what you do while doing it a little bit. These are common things, especially in interviews, that you have to show how you do it and what you think about it, and so on. And at least in my experience, it was not too much important that I can show I have done this before, but okay, I have the knowledge, I have it in my CV, but I can also apply it.
Very good, that's useful advice. I guess there's probably some information online as well if people want to Google for specific processes that the kind of tier 1 consultancy companies apply. You might be able to find something just through Google as well. There's a question in the chat. Is there a possibility for remote work as a consultant? Do any of the panelists here? Yes, I can see some nodding. Do you have experience of being able to work remotely with your current roles?
Yeah, to be honest, most of my work currently is remote, I would say. in my company, but I think it also depends. Sorry, Romy.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, in my company, it really depends. I have some colleagues that come to the office once a month. I have some colleagues that are there every day. I think the policy is to work 50-50 in the office and at home. But some people are at the customer and have to do radiation protection work or consulting. The customer visits still will always stay.
Ignacio, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, just to say that I've been working fully remote since 2020. So I have the opportunity to go to the office if I want, but I don't have to. So I think nowadays it's easy to get a full remote position because companies know that the talent is not in the place where the company is based. You can find talent in other cities or in other countries. So you cannot. Well, I think for me it's like a new era. After the pandemic, it's like that's my experience and my opinion.
Thank you, Ignacio. It's good to see the world's adapting. Lilian, did you want to add something?
Well, yeah, it's basically seconding what Ignacio just said, but I find it like fascinating this shift that that pandemics led to. Like this fear of like, oh, people won't work if they are not in the office is like almost reversed. It's like if you want a really efficient day, you stay home, and if you want to like connect with your team, have these coffee chats, then you go to the office. So it's quite interesting, this flip.
Yeah, no, you're correct. So if we just take one more question from the Zoom chat, and then I'll leave everybody for a quick break, if that's okay. Is that all right? Well, Rachel, with your timing? Yeah, good. Okay. So, Maciej, sorry, is there a path for more experienced researchers to not start from a junior position when moving from academia? So I think it's following on a bit from the previous question about moving in and what skills do you need. So is there a path for more experienced researchers to not start from a junior position? Kind of going in at a higher level, I guess. Ignacio?
Yeah. For example, I think or I was lucky or I had enough skills at that moment. But I think if you have a PhD, it's a good starting point because you can tell the company that you already have skills. You have been doing presentation, you have to deal with other groups, or you are collaborating in international projects. So you already have some skills. You need to know the private sector, you need to know clients, you have deadlines, you are not researching anymore, you need to be on time, but you already have a lot of skills. So if you have a PhD, you can start in a middle role, let's say.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it depends very, very much on the type of job you expect to have. Because within consultancy, like Ignacio said, there are many other skills that you also haven't learned from your research time. So I would, a junior position might not be the right thing, but a midway between junior and senior might be the right thing. And then you will probably very quickly get up to speed because you have all the tools from your PhD to get there quite quickly. So I wouldn't worry about starting in a junior plus position and then moving from there.
Thank you. Lilian, did you want to add something?
Well, yeah, okay. Again, seconding what they say, but it's also, I mean, at least for me, there wasn't like a post of like the seniority of the position. It was more like you do what you can, in a sense that if you have, so I also, as Ignacio had a PhD coming in, so it was like natural responsibilities, and then from there you grow, right? I wasn't put to tasks that were too junior for me. It was rather the opposite. So again, depends on where you land. But there's sky's the limit.
Love that. Fantastic. Okay, so I think on that very positive end note, the sky's the limit. Perhaps it's a good moment to have a quick break for a coffee. Just to summarize a bit what we've heard from the three of you. So Sebastian recommends that you keep your approach broad. There will be a steep learning curve, even if you know a lot already. Daniela mentioned that at CERN you become a generalist, which helps you to look to other sectors and help them with what you've seen and experienced at CERN. And Liliana's experience on FameLab was great experience, as she said, great training for going into consultancy. So we've got a whole bunch of questions ready to ask. I'm going to refer back to the chat to Pablo's question. Everybody, panelists, as a consultant, mostly do you get to work on challenging, interesting projects, providing specialized expertise that companies lack? Or do you rather work on not so nice tasks that companies outsource because they are not their core? Lilian, would you like to answer this one?
Yes, so for me at least, that's totally the first one. It's like we are only called upon when the customer has a problem that's so advanced that they cannot fix it themselves. And then, yeah, so Ignacio mentioned this like new bubble of OpenAI and ChatGPT. So that's an interesting take. Like, so customers now have like, oh, how hard can it be? It's open, like, and then after a while they come, we need help. So yes, it's totally that. Oh, there's so much I could say. It's actually a funny thing with this customers coming with complex problems, because part of my job is actually to hide the complexity from them, in a sense, which is sort of the complete opposite of what you do at CERN. Like, you want to show all the details, all the craziness of what you've done, like, and you have the like privilege of not being pedagogic about it. Like, you can just dump all the details of everything that you do. I mean, it's obviously better if you're pedagogic, but you don't have to be. And then this hiding the complexity from the customer is sort of, it's a very interesting and difficult task. It's like, where do I set the bar? And because they have to be informed enough to make good decisions, right? But you don't want to overwhelm them, because otherwise they would have been able to do it themselves, right? So that's very interesting balance.
There's some nodding around the table. Daniela, please.
Sorry, if I can comment, that's a very important point. Hiding the complexity, but selling the value of the solution. And that's something that how we sell the expertise. And yeah, coming to talk after Lydia is just totally agree. It's pretty much the first one. And at least for me, I'm just called when the complexity is, they don't have the competence, the technical competence, and they're either looking the competence for me and so that I can help them to find the competence. So it's pretty much on very, very challenged projects.
Yes, definitely. Plenty of nodding going on as well. Sebastian.
Sorry. I think very often also the problem that hiring a consultant is not cheap. So you don't put them on dumb tasks which are boring or easy. You hire them to get something done which you can't achieve yourself, where you simply have not the knowledge, where it's complex, difficult, and then you expect them to find a smart solution to get it done in an easy way. And that's most of the time what at least I experienced. I'm not as long as in this business as others, but it was very often that it's a complex problem which they can't solve themselves, and you have to find a smart solution.
Thank you. Turning to Prasham's question in the chat, he asked, is it a disadvantage to be considered for the job if I don't know the local language? Is fluency in English enough? Perhaps this links a bit to also what Jacob was talking about this morning. Was it Jacob? I think when Ignacio, you were mentioning about telework and remote working.
I think I can at least start with an answer if you want. So for us, it has very much changed also since my company started with being more localized in Munich, and also many expected to have the local language, but now with more remote work and having also more internationalized and have more people also outside Germany, very many projects are simply English, and people expect you at least to speak English. Sometimes it helps if you can speak in the language that people of the country that people live in, but I think, at least in my context, I wouldn't say that having only English, let's say, and as the main working language is a problem or has any issues.
Thank you, Sebastian. There's a question from Michelle in the chat as well. What about the advantage to be a partner?
Well, I guess that was for me. Well, the thing of course, you don't become a partner as soon as you join a company. You have to show your value. But the advantage is that you get, better payment in the sense that it's as a long-term commitment with the company. And by becoming a partner, you get through all the projects, not only the hours you work on the projects you work, because on the consultancy world, the general rule, I would say, it's the most common thing is that you allocate X hours on a project, so you get paid by those X hours. And that's how you charge a client as well.
Thank you. Daniela, I missed a question, sorry. Irini, could the panelists talk to us about some challenges or difficulties they faced during transition or during interviews and how they overcame them? It's a tricky one to come up with something that's...
I infer that they had no problems.
Exactly,
Yeah.
everything was fine.
Or too many, so trying to pick up.
All right, actually, maybe we link this one to the question that is in the live Q&A, which says, what do you answer in an interview when they ask you what salary do you want? I would say that was a difficult question to answer. Perhaps we can link this one to Irini's question.
For me, it's I will give another approach to this, if I may. I didn't go through interviews to be a consultancy company, and I decided, to build the company myself. But doing that, I go through interviews with every client. So I sell myself because I'm the company, I'm the competence of the company. And it's almost going to 2-3 interviews every day. So first thing is that you have to understand how to pass the message to the client. So there is a lot of, I would say, background work. You have to do it prior to talking with the client, understanding, what is his level of knowledge. And as Lilian said, try to hide the complexity of the job you're going to propose and to make it rapport. I think that's the first thing. And the second is being prepared for receiving a no, because most of the times are no. So I don't know, it's uncountable. So most of the time you sit with a client and they don't pick up your company. And that's the general rule. So it's the exception is when you get a contract, if you count on the thing. So it's also not to get demotivated when the no comes first. So it's being resilient, I would say. It's
a very many walks of life, I think. Yes. Thank you, Daniela. Anne-Marie, are you available to come on camera and ask your question?
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you. I have a question that was basically raised by Lilian, because you talked about the imposter syndrome, but maybe the others also have experience with that. So yeah, my question is, how do you deal with that? And yeah, how do you basically, if not overcome, just work with it?
Right. Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's a good leader from what Daniela just talked. So resilience is key, I would guess. To some extent, you just have to sort of stand in it, but I think it really helps to know about that this is a thing, right? And so you're all part of like the forefront of knowledge. You're pushing boundaries. You're raw talent, right? And you're ambitious because of what you are. So you only compare yourself upwards, and you only see like what other people know and can. You don't see what they can't. So it's a sort of an unfair position to be in. So basically, just tell yourself that you're good enough, and sort of believe in that. And yeah, I have many stories here, like which links to the previous, like what difficult situations, for instance, like the interview process that I went through with him. So I don't have a lot of experience. I've only been through one interview process, but so I can only tell you about that, right? But so I got like a task, data set, and an article that I should present. Like, so they wanted to test my communication skills and my sort of data analysis skills. And they were like, yeah, here's the data, and do a simple EDA. I was like, yeah, this starts great. Like, what's an EDA? So and then it's just like, okay, I'll figure it out. Google, okay, oh yeah, okay, you use this word for that, okay. And so it's exploratory data analysis. Anyways, yeah. So so it's funny, like, yeah, what you feel inside and what other sees. That's the contrast there is just, you have to be aware of it, and then maybe it's easier to handle your own feelings. So so I went through that. I've never told my employer this, but I had a crazy hard time preparing for that interview. And I learned afterwards that was at the time, one of the best interviews they anyone had. So like this, the contrast, right? You know, and also like I'm talking for a long time here, but a colleague of mine that I really like look up to, and I feel like he knows everything. And then I learned that he had these days of like, I just wish that I was like nailing pallets, like had a really simple job. I was like, okay, if you feel like that, then it's okay that I feel like that sometimes. Like I'm way in over my head here. So yeah, just know that it's a thing, and sort of accept it. I don't know whether the other panelists have some other tips or tricks here.
Yeah, I can continue because I agree to a lot of the things you say, Lillian. And the next step I would say is talk about it. Like, be honest, because like, if you don't start talking about it, you're never going to realize that other people have similar thoughts as yourself. That's the best advice I can give, I think. Like, nobody's perfect, right? Everybody has their own flaws, struggles, and so like, just let's be honest about that and talk about it. I think that's the easiest way to break it down.
Well, if I can just compliment, one thing that I learned on my journey is that other people tend to have a better concept and better value of you than you have by yourself, from yourself. And that's, you know, the thing of being humans. We underestimate our capability, our abilities, and our capacity. So it's something that you learn as well.
These are all, yeah, very true things I think you're all saying.
And the fact of Sebastian said is that being honest is pretty important. That, you know, that saying, I don't know, but I know who knows, or, you know, I'm going to do my best to learn this part and see what we can do, what we can offer to you. That's another, an important approach when you are in front of a client.
Thank you, Danielle. It's great advice. While you're here, could I ask another question that's come up in the chat, please? So somebody's asked, on starting your own consultancy, do you have any advice on how to know when you have sufficient contacts or potential work to make a jump from an existing job?
No, I didn't have any advice. In fact, it was pretty much, I wanted to move city, and I decided, okay, I resigned from this position and I go and open a consultancy myself. So the motivation was pretty much on a family part that I was forced to move city. But I did, in fact, stop and thinking that, you know, I had a huge network. I knew what the people were looking for. And then I started a plan. So I built a plan, you know, I made myself a challenge that I would make at least 3 contacts a day. And I would do it this from Monday to Friday, a minimum 3 contacts, and trying to test my speech. And it was really, you know, a test and trial, and see what would work first until I got my first contract. And in fact, it was pretty fast. In 3 weeks, I had the first contract. It wasn't a huge contract, but it was a contract that was paying my bills, and I was quite happy on this. And then the challenge was, you know, to keep doing the 3 contacts a day, even while I had a contract already and I had to deliver the job, and still put myself to the 3 contacts a day so that I could, you know, build a pipeline of projects that I could deliver. And I think that's the tough part of being a consultant, is that you have the peaks and the valleys. And when you have the peaks, if you are not well structured, you tend to work almost 20 hours a day. And then when you are a valley, then you tend to be very demotivated and saying, okay, I won't be able to find enough contracts to pay myself. So you have to be very organized on making the pipeline, and it's being constant.
Okay, so being very organized, building a plan. That's good advice. Thank you, Daniela. Okay, if I can just take a question from the live Q&A, maybe one more before we have another quick break, and then we can come back to some more afterwards. Let's take the first one. So is the environment, relationship with people, expat friendliness, etc., in the industry more or less toxic than in academia? What is your opinion? Maybe you can bring some examples.
What I think are nice things outside academia. And one of them is exactly that. So, well, if it's not toxicity, then rather nice atmosphere. And actually this effect of being in the same boat, sort of. So I called it that, and that has a lot of, I don't know whether it makes sense to you. So in academia, you're sort of always competing, even though you're working on the same thing, you're always competing for sparse resources. Whereas when you're hired somewhere, you're really a team, like you fail together or you succeed together. And there's no like risk in sharing ideas. And your coworkers are genuinely interested in helping you. And this was for me a big relief when I went out of academia. Like, okay, it's also like maybe playing on this, I don't know whether imposter thing, but at least like there's less risk of asking stupid questions if you want to. There are no stupid questions. It's like I can ask freely. I don't have this sort of death anxiety of not knowing, because we're in it together. So that's something I want to highlight. A good thing. So I find my sort of, work teammates really awesome. So yes.
Thank you, Lynn. It's reassuring to hear that that's the case. Lars as well, the question. It's 3:55. If we have a very quick 10-minute second break now, because we've got a very nice third part to move on to, which is on what is each panelist's top advice for a successful interview transition to the consulting sector.